Well, greetings again, and it is my honor to introduce the Chocmools. Here they are.
Good evening, Alan. Good evening, Estancia. Thank you for having us here tonight. I am Kylie Lundahl. This is Nai Morez, and this is Renny Morez. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. We are here tonight on your show because we would like to present you with a sample of movements that we practice. Before we do the demonstration of these movements, we would all three of us like, first of all, to tell you a little bit about who we are and how we came to practice these movements. 25 years ago, an anthropologist by the name of Carlos Castaneda wrote and published a book entitled The Teachings of Don Juan, a Yaqui Way of Knowledge. In that book, he described his experiences as an apprentice of a Mexican Indian sorcerer by the name of Juan Matus. Over the years, Carlos published 8 other books. These books dealt with different topics about his experiences as an apprenticeship with Don Juan. And because of that, his name and the name of his teacher, Don Juan Matus, became known worldwide. With that, all of Castaneda's books were translated into 17 different languages. For these last 25 years that we've been discussing here, Castaneda has refused the spotlight. He refused the spotlight under the premise that this anonymity that he would keep would allow him to continue his work without any social impediments. And he himself stated that Don Juan did succeed in convincing him of the validity and the seriousness of sorcerer's propositions. Don Juan Matus transmitted to Castaneda some knowledge. This knowledge was about perception. It was about the nature of perception. And he also transmitted to Castaneda information and knowledge about the key role that energy plays in perceiving and interpreting the world around us. Now, this knowledge was not an invention. This knowledge was the distilled accumulation of a millenary knowledge, the result of lifetime experiences of generations of sorcerers. There are 3 other disciples of Don Juan Matus's. That's Florinda Donner Grau, Taisha Abelard, and Carol Teagues. The 4 disciples of Don Juan Matus are the last remnants of an entire lineage of sorcerers. The 3 of us here tonight are the recipients of the knowledge that Don Juan imparted to those 4.
Good evening. I am Nai Morez. And the question has been asked from time to time, how did you come to be the recipients of this knowledge? And the story is not a linear one, but it begins, you could say, with when one of the 4 disciples of Don Juan Matus, Carol Teagues, became so involved in a particular aspect of the sorcerer's world that she was separated from her fellow disciples for a period of over 10 years. And upon finishing her task, she returned to them. And this return was a very dramatic event for them. Carlos Castaneda gave a lecture at a bookstore in Santa Monica, and Carol Teagues attended that lecture. She found out about the lecture completely by chance, and she had almost given up on finding Castaneda after her return. And so, naturally, Carlos Castaneda, he was very difficult to find, and she thought it would be impossible because he was very careful to maintain his inaccessibility. And when he saw her at this lecture, naturally, it was not something that he expected. As far as he knew, Carol Teagues had left for the duration of his life. And so, according to him, the shock that he felt upon seeing her was indescribable. And the force of this event was so extraordinary for the sorcerers, the students of Don Juan, that it influenced them to do something that they call opening the doors of the sorcerer's world that had been before that closed. So, one consequence of this reappearance of Carol Teagues was our appearance, the three of us. And you could even say that Carol Teagues herself brought Rennie Merez, because Rennie also attended that same lecture and was sitting next to Carol Teagues. Kylie Lundahl came almost at the same time, and then I, Nai, came a little later. The sorcerers, when the three of us were together, it dawned on them that we were the guardian unit. That was a structural part of their tradition. And they call us Chakmulls, which is a term that Don Juan used to make a link or a simile between the guardians, this guardian unit, and some stone figures that are found at the pyramids of Tula and Yucatan in Mexico. And the scholars often say that these figures are incense burners. Don Juan told his disciples that these figures were guardians of the pyramids as sites of power. The word Chacmul itself comes from a Mayan town of that name, but it's a name that is only used, the application of this name is particular to this generation of sorcerers. The original name for the guardians were the guardian warriors.
And good evening again. My name is Renata Merez, and our movements are called Tensegrity, which is a term borrowed from architecture, which refers to the internal balance attained through the compression and decompression, relaxation and tension of skeletal structures. We find this term most appropriate for our movement because basically a similar internal balance is attained in the human form through the relaxation and tension of muscles and tendons. Tensegrity is based on one of the cornerstones of the sorcerer's world, and this is basically what they call the magical passes. Don Juan Matus told his four disciples that the magical passes were not invented, but rather they were discovered. He also told his disciples that when the sorcerers went into dreaming, they could see that within the human form there was a special sort of mysterious binding force that held all the conglomerate of energy fibers together. Astronomers have said that there is a similar binding force that holds the universe together. Without this force, the universe would dissipate. Don Juan Matus says that this also would happen to the human form without this binding force. The sorcerers of ancient Mexico found this binding force extremely important to them. They found that by doing certain movements, they could call their attention at will to this binding force. Oh, okay, to this binding force. This became very important to them because because basically, if they could call their attention to this binding force, they could change, alter, and do whatever they wanted with their beings. The three of us here have worked with Carlos Castaneda and his disciples for about 7 years, and for about 7 years, and we have basically attempted to, not transform, but take Tensegrity out of the realms of the ancient sorcerers. The ancient sorcerers, when they used Tensegrity, was shrouded in darkness, secrecy,
let's show one of the movements on tape,
Surely.
and then we'll come back and talk a little more about it. So this is called the access.
Back. I want to immediately go into a question that I've been wanting to hear the answer to, and that is that I understand that Carlos has mentioned that there is very little time for us left. Kylie, can you tell me what that means, what he's referring to your understanding?
Yes, that question has actually two aspects to it. The one of the aspects is that there is very little time for mankind in general. The other aspect is there very little time for sorcerers. We sort of have to keep ourselves in check, because what we want to do is answer the first one very, very quickly. And I think that easily...
Most people want to hear the answer to the first question.
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay,
the first one...
Don't forget that.
I won't. The first one, the first aspect, we have heard that sorcerer's opinion is that there is very little time left for mankind. But, on the other hand, that opinion, that mood, that idea has been in vogue for many, many, many years. Maybe even before we even knew. And the world is still going strong.
When you say little time, do you mean the time of what is now, and then there will be a beginning of it? I mean,
that's what I'm saying. We don't know. People have been saying that for millennia. It's been going on, for a very long time. But everything seems to still be going. So nobody really knows. How can we know? The other aspect is there very little time left for sorcerers? Yes. There's very, very little time left.
Why?
It's a minute to midnight. Because basically, Carlos Castaneda and the other three disciples have fulfilled their task. They've completed it. They were all given the task a very long time ago to become empty, to become void of all of the concerns of the world, all of the concerns about me, the neediness of the me, the I, to be fulfilled, the desires, the wants, the ideas about the self, the ideals that we have to spend all of our energy on maintaining throughout the day. Those are all gone. What we are facing right now is that they are now confronted with a new task, sorcerer's task. And Rennie will comment on that.
Basically, as we see it, their new task is to leave this dimension or this plane of the face of the earth with their total awareness, with their total life force. On one level, I guess you could interpret it as it's their time to die, but it's not death as we know it. They're not going to be buried in the ground. Their bodies will not decompose. Instead, like Kylie said, through all their 30 years of discipline, and as their level of awareness has raised to the fullest, to fulfill their luminous eggs, their bodies will burn from the fire within, adding to their awareness, and they will leave. They will leave this dimension.
They'll transform their bodies into sheer awareness. So it's something that enters into what sorcerers call the inconceivable, because it's not something that we have terms for or something that we can understand.
And we will do everything within our power to grab a hold in that last second and then go with them.
So you don't have a feeling about like trying to bring the earth with you, and that's just someone else's job, and that's the job of others? Because there are many of us who are working with what we call ascension, and that is lifting humankind as well and ourselves into a higher dimension.
Well, I can't comment on that because I'm not a practitioner of what it is that you've said, but I can comment on what we practice. And I know that Carlos Castaneda has said that the world is fine. The world will take care of itself. If human beings could just have a revolution for themselves. The revolution for the world,
The earth also.
Yeah, the earth is pretty much is what I'm talking about. I don't know.
You experience the earth as a conscious being. Then,
Oh,
don't you?
definitely.
Right. So we agree on that language.
Yes.
At
Yes.
least we're
Yeah. Yeah.
Just saying that the earth will survive
She will.
the humans.
Yeah. The earth will have a revolution of its own.
So the reason you're bringing these movements out into the open and Carlos is coming out of the closet, as they say, in a spiritual sense, is to bring the availability of this energy enhancer, this energy body enhancer, Tensegrity, and his teachings to more and more people.
Yes.
But Carol Teague's return opened the door.
Just that blasted open something.
Yes.
It opened the door, but they have always been compelled to bring this opportunity to people.
And that is what the books were written for, to share the experiences.
They held that intent.
It's, and the Tensegrity is the first step. That's being.
There are more plans to make it more available, make more tools available in a sense, as Tensegrity movements are a tool for
Well, in a
consciousness or perception growth.
Well, plans are difficult to talk about, but we don't have plans. Whatever is in front of us, we act on impeccably, and this is what's in front of us right now. And so we do it to the best of our ability.
But is there an intention, say, to use a word for a second tape or a third tape? Or
Well, Carlos says that there's 28 volumes.
that's an intention. Right? That's almost a plan in words, in moving words, right?
It's an intent, or it's a conglomeration of things that became known to him.
Right.
And so he said, this is what's there. Whether or not we will have the energy to do it, I don't know. We will all see.
But one tape is out, and that's the first one of what he sees as 28 tapes.
Yes.
So the
Of
second
movements.
one is in,
We
almost
have the
done.
movements for the second
Right.
one.
And you're going to demonstrate some of the movements that aren't on the first tape a little later on.
Yes.
Yes.
Live, right at studio.
Live.
Whoa.
The second tape, the first one was called 12 Basic Movements to Gather Energy and Promote Well-Being, and we have the name for the second tape, 12 movements for 12 preparatory movements for utilizing hidden bodily energy.
And do you do all 28 12s in a day?
Like each of you in your life. Do you
I mean, do you
do
some people
these?
do yoga and they do 12 exercises. I mean, do you 28 times 12 every day?
Oh, there's more than that. There's millions.
You don't do millions every day, don't kid me.
We do as much as we possibly can.
Well, and you know, that brings up
And
the
is there
whole
a certain
idea.
order?
Well, they're delivered in a certain order to the public at large, because that does carry a specific intent, just as a book carries a specific intent. What Carlos Castaneda does not want is, he's not a guru, and he doesn't want to be, and he doesn't want followers. He wants peers. He wants people who can will truly practice the Tensegrity until they reach the point to where they are energy interacting with energy, and then they will know the order of things. They will know how to act. And so that's the important thing. But yes, in the beginning it's important to follow the order, because it is set up in a specific intent.
So how long would it take an ordinary person, or a person that's on the spiritual path and interested, to become adept at these? Are these movements easy or difficult? How long did they take you to actually
Oh, I
learn?
think they're very difficult.
They're very difficult. They
Yes.
seem like they're very, very concentrated.
They're,
Extremely.
yeah, they're very intense.
You can't be thinking.
No.
When I
And you
watch
can't
it,
watch
it's like-
television when you do it. I noticed that.
The movements elicit that. The movements themselves elicit the silence. You don't have to think of having to achieve some great state of silence before you embark on your first Tensegrity movement, because that first tape is designed to be accessible exactly to someone who wants to begin this. And the movements, they're complete passes in themselves, right there, that you can do and start working with immediately. So it's not, we don't want to think, even though sometimes it's difficult to get the precision of certain movements, we don't want to think in hierarchies of, now I'm an adept. there's
a
no
green
such
belt
thing.
and a black belt.
Yeah, exactly. That's not.
Right.
That's the antithesis of what we're doing.
Can you just quickly, because we're going to show another clip really soon, but can you quickly just give us a visual, give us an image of what it was like when you first met Carlos? What was that like? Did you know that you would be working with this person?
No,
As soon as you- no.
no, we didn't know that. No, I don't think any of us.
No, and I think one of the first tips, as you said, for all of us was Tensegrity.
Okay, looks like we're ready for our second clip. So here we have the Chocmools doing a live demonstration. There you go.
Okay, the first movement that we'll show you from the second video is called the Pyramid of Energy for the Head. I'll demonstrate with running
Я объясню проделанное с помощью рей.
this movement.
Вначале на вдохе делаем
First, you're
вращение
going
руками.
to circle the
Изнутри
arms
наружу
inward and then
фиксируем
back
руки
out
на
as you
поясе,
inhale. Then bring the hands to the waist, with the
выставленным
thumb
большим пальцем. Затем
extended
делаем выдох.
and exhale.
Еще раз вдох, руки
Then
на
again,
пояс и
second time,
выдох.
inhale, hands at the waist, exhale, and then a third time,
Третий раз
inhale,
вдох, выдох.
exhale, and then a
И на
fourth
четвертом
circle.
круге мы держим
And this
большие
time you keep
пальцы
the thumbs
прижатыми.
next
Держа
to the
руки в области
fingers,
печени
put it at the
поджелудочной
liver
железы.
pancreas area here, just
Чуть
below
ниже
the
ребер,
ribs, and you
задержав
don't
при этом
exhale.
дыхание.
And you begin to exhale as you
Вдыхайте,
trace
описывая
the
пирамиду.
pyramid.
Одна грань
This is the
пирамиды,
back,
другая,
another side of the
затем
pyramid, and
основание.
then she traces the
Снова
base,
вверх, передняя грань,
around the
основание.
front and the base, and then she comes back up
И
to the
вернувшись
tip,
к вершине,
now she's going
продолжаем
to trace
движение,
out
описывая
the
боковые
sides of the
грани.
pyramid,
Вверх,
up,
вниз,
down, and
останавливаемся.
she stops, and now she's going to take the base of the
Сейчас
pyramid,
берем основание
push it out,
пирамиды,
and as she
выталкиваем.
inhales, bring it
На
up
вдохе
over her
поднимаем
head,
ее и надеваем ее
and she's
на
going to
голову.
inhale, exhale, and
Затем
then
делаем
inhale
выдох,
and exhale 3
вдох
times
и
as she
выдох 3 раза.
collapses the pyramid.
Во время чего
Collapses
сдавливаем
here
пирамиду,
and goes into the body.
энергия из которой переходит в тело.
Okay.
Итак,
The
второй
second
новый пас
new movement
называется
is called the
«Маленький
Little
домик
House of
энергии».
Energy.
Готовы?
Okay.
Хорошо. Кайли, не продемонстрируешь
Show
нам
us
его?
that one. Okay.
Итак, делаем оборот руками
bring
и
your arms
останавливаем
around,
четким движением.
And you bring them
Это
up with a
фундамент.
stopping action of force. This
Снова
makes
поднимаем
the
их, это
basement.
потолок.
You bring them up again. This
Разворачиваем
makes the
кисти и делаем
ceiling.
рубящие
Turn your hands
движения.
over
Это
and slice. That makes the
Опускаем
roof.
руки,
Bring the
это
hands
стены.
down. That makes
Еще
the
одно
wall.
рубящее
One more
движение,
slicing
это
action.
пол. И
That
еще
makes the
раз.
floor. Just do it all at once.
Хорошо.
Okay. The third one is
Третий
called the
называется
sorcerer's breath.
«Дыхание мага».
Okay,
Итак, наи прошу.
with Nai, the first
Первое
position of the
положение
hand,
руки. Указательный
the
палец.
fingers are held in close to the
Остальные
palm,
согнуты к
the
ладони.
index finger is held very tight and
Большой
straight,
смотрит на ладонь.
Pull the
Ладонь
thumb
должна
into
быть
the
плоской
hand.
и напряженной.
and make sure that the palm is
Начинаем
very
с правой
flat
руки.
and tight.
Рука с вытянутым указательным пальцем.
You start with the right hand. The hand with the index finger straight goes vertically over and back as you have a shallow breath and turn the head to the right. Now the left hand goes in a horizontal line around the body. Now I'm going to just turn around for a second so you can see how the hands join in the back. The one with the index hand goes first and they join at the wrist. You pause for a moment at this point, and then you slowly inhale as you lean down, bending at the waist and the legs, pulling the hands and the arms as high up on the back as you can. Now you slowly exhale as the fisted hand comes around horizontally to the front. Continue the exhale as the index finger hand comes around to the front in a vertical fashion. Now you pause for a moment and inhale as you slowly stand up and roll the arms up. Straight up over the head. Stretch the torso very, very far. Now exhale as the hands slowly come down. Pause for a moment. Now inhale as you circle around. And exhale as you circle in the opposite direction. Now inhale as you push the hands out 1.5 times. Exhale for the last 1.5 times. Now you repeat on the left side. Vertically back, fisted hand horizontally back. Exhale as you look at the horizon, stopping at the center. Now inhale as you lower yourself and raise the arms up over your back. Pause for a moment. Exhale as the fisted hand comes around horizontally to the front. Continue to exhale as you bring the other hand vertically back. Pause. Now inhale as the hands roll up the body. Stretch the torso. Now exhale as you bring the hands down. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale.
Все.
That's it. That's it for now. Shall we come back? Yes.
Thank you.
How do you feel after doing that? Can you put it into words?
Well, hopefully you feel unfamiliar to yourself. That's the whole, that's the focus, that's what we're after with Tensegrity, is inner silence, and that it pushes you to an energetic point where you are truly unfamiliar with yourself. So that as you move through the day and you act from the position of freedom, not from the position of something that was ideas about yourself, belief systems and things like that that you did not ask for.
Do you have increased energy to the point where you actually find yourself sleeping less with all of this? Or how does that work?
Sleeping less might be a product of the fact that in the sorcerer's world, you work your tail off. But yes,
You don't have time to sleep?
we do, and we always want to take care of our health. So I'm joking with you. But yes, we do. It does help you. Sometimes it will affect your sleeping patterns, things that you eat. Things are shifting. So
Do you have a special diet that all of you follow
Well,
for energy?
none of us can eat sugars. Sugars are very, very difficult because as children, they're used for so many things and they're really forced on the body. Comes to an adulthood and the pancreas has a very difficult time assimilating sugars. And so it can make people very neurotic, which is not what we need. We're after
not what you're
sobriety
after.
and impeccability, and it takes an extreme amount of energy, everything that you have, every last ounce that you have in order to do that. And that's what we're after, and that's what's exciting.
Wow.
Интересно.
And I think also getting back to the sleep for a moment, it comes in waves, and there are certain movements and passes that we do that really, really pull on us in ways that are indescribable, ways that we can't explain, and so it can make us very, very tired. But it's for a moment. And again, you know, with the recapitulation, you find out a lot of amazing things about yourself in that way that a lot of people have a huge value system on if they need a lot of sleep, that there's something wrong with them. We have a value system. So I think that it just depends on what it is that we're doing. Sometimes it makes you just want to sleep for a very long time, and sometimes you don't want to go to sleep.
I can relate to that.
Есть и
Some
другие
of the other
преимущества.
benefits, though, are
Сосредоточенность,
increased
способность
focus, able to
концентрироваться.
concentrate.
Некоторые замечают, что
Some
могут
people find
решать
that they
сложные
can do
математические
very
задачи
complex
или понимать
mathematical
вещи,
problems
которые не
or
понимали
understand
прежде.
things that they weren't able to understand before. So,
То есть
So it brings clarity to the
привносит
mind.
ясность
yeah.
в разум.
What if
Совершенно
moments
верно.
of
В
silence
моменты
that occur
тишины
while you're doing Tensegrity
во время занятий
bring
Tensegrity
emptiness.
рождают
So,
пустоту.
you know,
Так что
they're
So the
not
creative
rolling
force
over.
has no blockages against it, so it just comes out, whatever comes out, yeah, wherever it comes.
Whatever comes in, really.
Are there any children that have learned any of these movements?
Yeah, we see a lot of people in the workshops and things like that that have taught their children, and it's fabulous for children.
Seems like they would pick it up pretty.
Very much, because they're naturals at it. They already know, you know, their assemblage points are shifting. They're more in tune with it than what we are.
And they don't have 30 years of socialization.
Right.
Yeah.
on top of
Right,
it.
to break through.
Yes, yes.
So do you find that there's a tremendous desire for people to learn the movements, and the workshops are, you know, very well attended, and people seem really interested and serious? And
Yes, very much.
We've had great enthusiasm.
I think
Sold out.
sold out concerts.
Standing room
Oh,
only.
yeah. We've had
it really holds the hope of the sorcerer that there is a desperation in the human spirit that knows that as sentient beings who are going to die, that we have lost that awareness, we've lost that heritage in a sense, and that we are not aware that we are beings who are going to die. Otherwise, we would not act in the way that we do.
Well, I'd like to, you know, thank you all for coming.
thank
you very much for having us.
Very
It's
interesting.
really
Thank you.
exciting
It's
and
wonderful being
interesting.
here.
And I'd like to